is Janice Cobb of Save My Pet ID Tag. Engraved with your pet's info, they allow emergency personnel to start care for your pets if you're sick or injured. Head over to SaveMyPetIDTag.com and explore products. They ensure peace of mind for you and for your four-legged family.
Do you love to travel? But do you hate leaving your well-mannered dog at home? Our special guest has traveled the world with her very sweet dog, Sparkles. And our guest also ranks as one of the most respected pet journalists on the planet. Please welcome to our show, Kim Campbell Thornton. Hey, welcome, Kim.
Hi, Arden. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we're going to get this party started. Have passport must travel, and that includes your dog. Dogs need a lot of documentations, right?
Yes, they do. And it's expensive to get.
Well, there's still that lotto out there for 1 point some billion. I think we can try it that route, right?
That would be helpful. But yeah, you can do it for a little less than that.
So let's get a little background about yourself. I've known you for over 20 years. You're the former editor of Dog Fancy magazine. Kim Campbell Thornton has written a number of dog books, cat books. She is an award-winning journalist. She also likes to scuba and hike and do other cool things. Kim, tell us a little bit about your travel mate, not your husband, Jerry, he's awesome. But who is your travel mate?
This trip, it was Sparkles. She's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. She's the sixth one that we've had over the past 20-ish years. She's 12 and a half years old. Mm-hmm. And we got her when she was 10 years old, and she has turned out to be the most amazing travel partner.
What's her trait that makes her a good traveler on four legs?
She is very flexible. She can adjust to anything. She took to flying just fine. We figured out she's been on about 9 different forms of transportation now.
Give us
from gondolas to airplanes.
Gondolas to airplanes?
Yeah.
So people are curious. You do like to travel. So you added the added challenge of having a canine with you. What made you say, she's coming with us?
So this was a trip we've been thinking about doing for quite a few years now, and things kept getting in the way, like COVID and former aging pets. The time was just never right. And this year, we had a healthy dog. We were both semi-retired. It was time to do it. And we were going to be gone for 3 months. And I said, we're not leaving Sparkles for 3 months, so she's got to go.
How many different countries did you, Jerry, and Sparkles visit on this 3-month trek?
I think it was 9.
Wow, all in Europe?
Yes.
Plus, you live in California, so you also had some destinations in the United States, too, to get there and to get back.
What we did earlier this year was we took a 2-month road trip and to visit family and to go to some conferences. And that was sort of the trial run. And that went great. And so we pulled the trigger on it.
Okay. You have written about this in the Whole Dog Journal, detailed article about how to travel internationally with your pets. But I want to get you going right here. Let's go with a misconception. You said, I remember back in the day, oh my gosh, I can't travel with my pet because they have to be quarantined in each country for 6 months. That's a lot in dog years, Kim.
Yeah, that is no longer true. That was actually only in the United Kingdom, and I don't think that's been true for years now. But you cannot fly into the UK with a dog in the cabin unless maybe you're flying up in a private jet, which most of us can't afford, or if you're taking the Queen Mary, then they have kennels that your dog can travel in.
Does the Queen Mary start in California?
Oh, the Queen Mary? No.
Yeah. Or where is it?
That starts in New York, I think.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you would have to fly from California to New York and then get on the Queen Mary and, cruise for a week.
It takes about a week to go across the pond.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. But you
I
also
haven't done it.
mentioned that there's getting to be a trend, and we had a guest on our show that has these private jet services, and they're not cheap, but tell us about them.
So there's Bark Air, and there are several other ones, I believe, too. And yeah, I think Bark Air starts at about $8,000 for a transatlantic flight.
For the pet, or for you,
the pet.
or each.
Yeah. And your pet doesn't have to be in a carrier, can be any size. And yeah, in that you can fly directly to the UK, or I think they also fly to Paris.
Okay.
And they're expanding their routes. And I think they are increasing the size of their flights as this becomes more known to people. And that should hopefully drive the price down some. But it's still always going to be an expensive option.
But if you wanted to go to London, couldn't you land in another city in Europe and motor in or take the train in with your dog?
So what you have to do is, fly into Paris or some other EU capital. And we hired a pet transport agency to take us over.
Good tip. Okay.
Because you cannot have your dog in the Eurostar.
Is that the
And
train?
there's
What's
That's
the
the train.
Eurostar? Okay.
Yeah, that's the train through the channel. And there's a lot of paperwork that you have to do, and it has to be done exactly right, or the Brits will turn you away at the border. And so it was great having this company take a look at the paperwork we had done by a vet in France and tell us what was wrong with it. Go back, have them redo it. It's got to be exactly this way, or they won't let you in.
So it
that
sounds
was
like
worth the money right there.
Yeah, it sounds like you have to pack patience.
Yes, and it's a good tip. And the other thing is we had to get paperwork for the UK and the EU.
Oh.
So that doubled the cost of getting the health certificates for Sparkles.
And don't they have like a time duration too? So you can't have something you did 2 years ago, right?
Right. Has to be within 10 days of your trip.
Oh my gosh.
So you've got to
That's a
get your
scramble.
dog to the vet, get the exam, have the vet fill out the paperwork, then send it in to the USDA, which reviews it and sends it back, all within this 10-day period. Yeah, right? We sent a FedEx envelope for them to return it next day.
Good.
And we actually forgot to send some required pieces of documentation that they needed. So we had to FedEx that to them, or I think they let us fax it. So we did that, and thank goodness they called us right away and said, hey, you need to send us this too.
Well, you're one of the most mellow people I've ever met, but I bet you were at your wit's end a bit.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
We did this several years ago with Harper, and I don't remember it being quite so difficult. But that was a different time.
Yeah. And Sparkle's personality is perfect for travel, you mentioned. How much does Sparkles weigh?
She weighs 14 pounds. So that makes her suited to fit under the seat in most airline cabins. We flew 3 different airlines on this trip.
Okay.
And I actually liked American the best.
And why is
Air
that?
Canada is what we flew from LA to France. And that was not very comfortable for her because they had sort of a slanted area where her carrier had to go. So during takeoff and landing, she would slide back and forth. So I don't think that was the greatest. But
Yeah.
other than that, she did fine.
All right. Hey, everyone. We're speaking with Kim Campbell Thornton. Her dog Sparkles, and her husband Jerry just returned from a 3-month trek to 9 countries in Europe. And she looks pretty okay to me. And Sparkles is doing well, too. We're going to dive into some other do's and don'ts if you're thinking about traveling with your pet after we take this break. And you all know the drill. You got to sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Hey, have you heard? Four-Legged Life has a new digital newsletter. Here, let me show you how you get yourself subscribed. So you just type in Four-Legged Life, and that'll take you to the website. There we go. And this magic thing just appears, and you type in your email address. I'll use, let's see, how about coolestdogever@gmail.com. That's me. And then you just click on this thing here. There you go. It's the new digital newsletter from Four-Legged Life. Get subscribed today.
Welcome back to the Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. I'm speaking with Kim Campbell Thornton, good pal of mine for, over 20 years. And she and her husband are in love with King Charles Cavaliers, the Love Sponges. And her latest is a world traveler by the name of Sparkles. Is Sparkles anywhere around, or can you describe Sparkles?
Sparkles is a Blenheim Cavaliers, which means she's chestnut and white. She has a little blaze on top of her head. Sparkles, would you like to come say hi?
And
She
she's
said
giving
no.
a silent bark to everybody because she's a well-mannered global traveler, right?
Yes, very.
Oh my gosh. So dogs need pet passports? What's an EU pet passport and how do you get your paws on it?
They don't need one. I mean, if you get your USDA paperwork here in the US before you go, that's all you need.
Okay.
But we wanted to have an EU pet passport because it was going to make it easier to go to the UK. And we
Okay.
didn't have to do it within that 10-day period if we could get the pet passport.
So where do you
So-
get a pet passport from?
You have to find a friendly veterinarian who will issue one to you. Some countries are more strict than others about who they'll hand them out to. We were fortunate to find a vet in France who said, sure, we'll do that. And we did have to take the paperwork back to her and have her redo it, which she wasn't happy about. But
Sacre bleu.
anyway, Google was our friend as far as finding a veterinarian who would do that. And the other place that was helpful for that was one of the many Facebook groups on traveling with pets in Europe. They, make recommendations about who they've used or the countries that are more friendly, Belgium being one, apparently.
Belgium's pet friendly, pretty pet friendly. Oh,
As far as
our
the
neighbors
issuing
on
pet
Dyson.
passports.
Yeah, our neighbors on Dyson, where I live in Dallas, are from Belgium. Though, so I'll tell them to go get a dog now on their next trip home.
All of Europe is very pet friendly. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty. But the dogs tend to be very well mannered there, don't you see?
They do. That
What
was
do you
one
think
of
that
the
is?
super pleasant things about being there with a dog. You didn't have other dogs and people rushing up to you and saying, oh, can my dog say hi? Or
Darn
dog
Americans.
being reactive to your dog and, barking at them. That was super rare.
Yeah. So, what would you pack for Sparkles? What's a few things that people may not expect that you're going across the pond on a plane, and you also have to have a suitcase for Sparkles, right?
Sparkles had her very own suitcase, and it was packed with food and a coat and a couple of, those small pads that served as beds, a sheet to cover the furniture in the hotel room that she might get on. We brought some dog food for a friend who lived there with her dog and couldn't access it there, so we had that along for a while. Treats.
I heard that it's kind of weird because you got to be careful what kind of food you bring, even dog food during customs. What about the fish protein versus meat, and what's the rules for dog food?
They do not allow importation of meat-based dog food.
Whoa.
So about a month before we left, we switched Sparkles over to a fish-based dog food.
Okay.
And that's what we brought with us, about 3 weeks worth of that. And then we had to find food in the EU that I was willing to feed her. There was a lot of grain-free dog food there, and that's not always the best choice for dogs with heart conditions like Cavaliers.
Yeah.
So I had to avoid that. But we did manage to find some foods along the way that I was willing to give her.
What were some of I know there's many photos on your Facebook page. How do people find the adventures of Kim, Jerry, and Sparkles?
That's probably the best place is on my Facebook page, which I believe is Kim Campbell Thornton.
Yes. That's easy. That's easy.
Yeah.
So there's pictures of Sparkles and you. Give us a little shout out of some of the places you got to take Sparkles on this 3-month trek.
We had some of our best times at a place in the UK called Marble Hill. It was, one of those fancy country homes that you could go tour. And dogs were allowed on the grounds,
Nice.
not in the house, but on the grounds. And it was huge. And there were so many spaces where you could just let the dog off leash. And I felt super comfortable doing that because we would just be in this big field alone. And I could see all around me that there weren't other dogs approaching, or any other kind of concern. Mm-hmm. And also, Sparkles has a perfect recall.
Oh,
So
nice.
I was also willing to let her off leash because of that. There was that. There was a hike at a place called Kern Abbas, which was the site of a giant chalk man. And we hiked up to that. And, Villa Borghese in Rome.
Okay. What is that?
Also, we were allowed to let her off leash there. And it was a beautiful wooded garden type area. And that was just lovely. We had her in her stroller at Carcassonne, which is a giant medieval fortress in France.
So you packed her stroller.
We did. It was sort of, do we bring this? Well, it'll be helpful maybe on hot days or when we're going to be walking for miles and miles. We didn't actually use it that much, but we were glad to have it when we did.
Because I travel with my cat, Casey, to pet events because he's a safety cat. And some airlines are very nice about pet strollers. Others charge you a lot of money because it's a pet stroller, not a baby stroller. Did you encounter that?
I did not encounter that, but we had the stroller and Sparkle's sleepy pod in a large bag that we just checked.
Okay.
So that's how that worked.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. Originally, Jerry had the romantic idea of taking the train all over Europe. But we thought about it, and I thought, with all our luggage and a stroller and the dog and trying to get all of that on and off a train and having to meet the train schedule, I decided it would be a lot more flexible and comfortable for all of us if we rented a car. So that's why we brought her sleepy pod.
So you could rent a car and go to different countries in the EU.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you encounter roundabouts?
Oh, yes.
Roundabouts.
We've encountered
I just got back
roundabouts
from
before.
Portugal. Yeah. I'm a
We do
master
like
at
them
roundabouts.
because you can just go round and round until you figure out where you need to go.
I didn't know Sparkles took the wheel a few times or was your navigator.
She was too short.
Okay. So lodging, easy to find, a dog-friendly place to stay?
Very easy to find. And we stayed in a range of different types of places. Interestingly, Best Westerns and Holiday Inns are much more upscale than we think of them here.
Okay.
We stayed at a Best Western in Toulouse, which was our first stop. And it was an absolutely gorgeous, palace-looking type place. And they were perfectly happy to welcome Sparkles. I can't think of any place that didn't,
Yeah. That's nice.
ooh and ah over Sparkles.
What about you and Jerry want to go someplace, take a day tour? How do you find a professional pet sitter? Because I think you took a day tour in Normandy to check out the
Yes.
World War II things.
We did. And I've never used Rover before, but I ended up using it for that. And we had a very nice young woman who came and just spent the day at our apartment. We were staying in an apartment in Bayeux and just hung out with Sparkles. Took her out for walks a few times. She said Sparkles didn't really warm up to her because Sparkles likes mom and that's about it.
That's okay. We won't
Yeah.
hold that against Sparkles.
Yeah.
So we just have about a minute left. Kim, what's some take home messages, good and bad advice? Because people are curious. We love our pets, and I hate being gone away from pet safety dog Kona and Emma.
So my first piece of advice is don't do this if you're going to be gone for only a month or less.
Okay.
Do it for a longer period. It's expensive. Do you think about taking a car instead of the train unless you're able to travel very, very lightly? I don't know. Just do your homework because you can really get hung up if you don't get the right documentation beforehand. And I've seen a lot of stories where people are turned away at the airport or at a border because they didn't have the right paperwork.
Is social media like Facebook with traveling groups that they seem to be getting better and better?
Yes, there are so many of them. There's traveling with dogs, there's flying with dogs, traveling with dogs in Europe, traveling with dogs from Europe to the UK. I mean, those are all the names of the groups. So
I like it.
if you look for names like that, you'll find one.
And last question, how was it to be able to have that memory, not only
Oh my
with your
gosh.
husband, but with Sparkles? I mean, seriously.
We had the best time, and she really made the trip for us, I think. Having her there was just a joy.
Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life.
Four-Legged Life.
Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content.
Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life.